Hey everybody, it's Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. We've got a loaded show today for you because it's free agency, and yeah, I'm dressed in black. It's a funeral. We're going to bury Kirk Cousins, and then we're going to move on to the future. But in this funeral to Kirk Cousins, I am going to give him his flowers. We're going to talk about the impact of the new quarterback, and we're also going to talk about what do we grade Kwesi on all these moves early on. We'll talk about that and much more coming up next on the Ron Johnson Show.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now the Ron Johnson Show. On the field, in the broadcast booth, Ron Johnson is Minnesota sports. He's played with them, hung out with them, and grown up with all the big names in Minnesota sports. They're hanging out with Ron Johnson. It's the Ron Johnson Show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. And it starts now.
Hey everybody, it's Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Not super excited. I mean, I'm dressed for a funeral. So anytime you dress for a funeral, it's tough to be super excited. It's going to be a tough one, but we're going to talk about Kirk Cousins. He's leaving. He's moving on. Some people hate him. Some people love him. I have a good analogy for what I think this is, and it's not the perfect one. It's similar. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about all these moves Kwesi's making. Kwesi's cooking. I'm not going to lie. I like what Kwesi's doing, so we're going to talk about that. But I want everybody to know today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Now, I've done this before, but I haven't done it with the Locked On, so I was able to use the $20 off. I checked out the Jazz versus the Nuggets. I was just in Colorado enjoying some volleyball with my daughter, and I was like, you know what? If this game ends early, we got time to run over there and try to catch a little bit. We were able to catch the end of the game. One of the parents wanted to get a Jokic jersey for her son. I guess he's a big Joker fan. And so we were able to catch the end, the second half of the game. And so it was super easy. I told all the other parents as well, just jump on the Gametime app, search Gametime on whatever app marker you're using, use code Locked On, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Well, as I bring my producer to the show, Sam Darnold, my co-host of the Ron Johnson Show. Sam, I'm dressed for a funeral. It's fitting. I gotta do it. I gotta bury Kirk Cousins. We gotta do it because people go through 7 stages of grief, and we know that. And I don't know what stage we're in right now, but we're just gonna make this final for all the everydayers, those that have continued to support, follow, like, watch, and subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota as well as the Ron Johnson Show. And we gotta kind of put it to bed. So I'm dressed in one of my funeral go-tos, just a nice quarter zip from Unreal, a nice little jacket, and then of course the sunglasses so you can hide the tears. But Sam, if we had the funeral music playing, I don't even know what funeral music is, but Kirk Cousins, I'll say this, Sam, he was very good to us in Minnesota. He was very loyal to a fault. He wasn't treated great. He wasn't. But Sam, he made the plays that needed to be made. He gave us the hope that we needed. He gave us the thought that we could maybe make a Super Bowl. He gave us the ability to feel like, you know what? Any game, any situation, if we're down 33 points, we can come back. If we're down to the Denver Broncos, 4 touchdowns, we can come back. If the Saints, if we just have to make a play at the end, he can throw it to Kyle Rudolph. He can find Adam Thielen on 3rd down and long. He could find Justin Jefferson in the forest and in the dark and throw a dot through the trees, Sam. But you know what he couldn't do, Sam? Couldn't get us to a Super Bowl.
Nope.
He couldn't. Record scratches there because he couldn't get us to a Super Bowl. He couldn't win in prime time, I guess people say. But this is the thing about Kirk Cousins, man. Like the fact that he's garnering $180 million. Clearly, he's worth the money. So let's be real about that. He is worth the money. Now, did that fit for the Vikings? No. So there shouldn't be any hard feelings on either side. He wanted what he wanted. The Vikings know what they could afford, and it just wasn't $180 million. It's a business. This is a business, man, and he's a business, man. And so we have to understand that, and that's all this was. This was a business decision by Kirk and his team. He's a guy that can give you 4,000 yards every season. I already heard it on our NBC partner, Dan Patrick. He was this morning. They were taking bets on Kirk Cousins stats, yards with the Falcons. Some people are saying 36, some people are saying 38, some people are saying 4,100 yards. That's what Kirk Cousins gives you. He gives you over 3,500 yards, and everybody can kind of bank on that one. That's an easy bet on FanDuel if you're looking for an early Kirk Cousins. Now, some people can bet against Kirk and say, I think he's going to throw for under 3,500 yards. Make the season fun for you. If you hate Kirk, bet against him all season. Just bet against his yards, bet against his interceptions. Say he's going to have more interceptions than they're listing him for. There's all kinds of ways to have fun on FanDuel if you really just want to, just say, I want to watch the Falcons. But I will say this, Sam. The Minnesota Vikings had to move on. It was time to move on. And it is what it is. I did message Kirk Cousins, and that before he messaged me back about something.
Right.
And I just kind of, I kind of knew it was coming. So beforehand, I just kind of congratulated him. Also, Sam, I'm kind of glad now because now when we have him on the show, we don't have to go through the Vikings. Because I think that was the tough thing with Kirk is, and that. Like, I didn't want to step on the Vikings' toes, so we knew we had to play that game with them. But now, just like Adam Thielen, just like CJ Ham, just like Josh Metellus, I can just say, Kirk, come on the show. I don't have to worry about the Vikings getting mad at me about me having them on the show without going through them. So he's now in Atlanta.
That's a perk. Yep.
That's a perk. See? So now he's an Atlanta Falcon. We'll let him get settled in Atlanta for a little bit. Then we'll have him on the show. Because now we don't have to go through this whole weird, make sure the Vikings okay it because he's no longer with the Minnesota Vikings. But when you look at them adding new pieces to this with Sam Darnold, and that's why, the funeral's over. I'm going to take the jacket off in the next segment anyway. But when you think about them moving on, Sam Darnold's 1 year, $10 million, I think is a smart play. If you think about what Kevin O'Connell could do with Josh Dobbs, with Jaron Hall, those first 4 plays of the Falcons game before he got a concussion, the way he was able to get Josh Dobbs acclimated to this offense in a number of weeks. Sam Darnold's not a runner. He's not going to do what Josh Dobbs did. So this offensive line has to protect. They have to understand what they're looking at. But what Sam Darnold can do is he can make those same throws. He can take that same ability and make those same throws. And the big difference in what Sam Darnold has never had, he's never had Justin Jefferson. So Sam, before we jump into the Sam Darnold, what are your thoughts on Kirk Cousins moving on to the Atlanta Falcons?
Yeah, when I saw the price, I was relieved. I think it made it an easy decision. Now, if the price had been 2 years, $80 million in Atlanta, people would have regrets. They would say you couldn't pony up $40 million for 2 years. He gets 45 over 4. I know it's not all guaranteed, but $100 million guaranteed. I was okay with that. And I was kind of prepared for Kirk to move along the whole time. My heart was okay with that. I think the Vikings made a good move here. And it's very clear to me that rookie quarterback incoming. You've got Darnold on a bridge deal, but you've got a rookie quarterback likely coming to Minnesota. And that's exciting to me. You are starting a new era. And I'm pumped about all the pieces they've added. We'll get to that later in the show. But they're creating a talented roster around Darnold/rookie. You might have Darnold for a couple games, half a year, maybe even a full year. But he's the short-term option. The rookie, who they have not drafted yet, that's who we can all get excited about, I think.
Alex Smith passed the torch, not on his own, like it wasn't his fault, but he passed the torch to Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying Drake May or J.J. McCarthy is going to be Patrick Mahomes, but I do think Kevin O'Connell has that mindset. Kevin O'Connell played with Tom Brady. He was in New England as well. So he knows that whole story as well. Tom Brady sat for a year and then injury. So it wasn't the plan to let Tom Brady take over for Drew Bledsoe, but injury happened. Tom Brady steps into the spotlight. But he understood what Tom Brady had learned by being able to sit behind a veteran like Drew Bledsoe. Because, we've seen the 30 for 30s. We've seen the Tom Brady family story, and they talked about that. Talked about how Drew Bledsoe helped him mature, helped him become the quarterback he is, helped him see the game the way he saw it. And I think that's what the Vikings are looking for. Sam Darnold, because they could have easily just said, we're going to draft a rookie and we'll have a bunch of blah, blah backups. No, let's bring in Sam Darnold, a guy that could get us through OTAs, get us through training camp, maybe, like you said, get us through 4 or 5 games. And then again, if he gets on a roll, you don't take I used to love it. I don't do it anymore, but I used to love gambling when I played football. And I always had this thought, like when you're on a roll, you don't just put the dice down and move on. If you're hitting and those dice are falling your way, you keep rolling. And I think that's where Kevin O'Connell's at. He's going to roll. He's a gambler. He's not Ron Rivera, but he is a gambler. He was willing to gamble his season on Josh Dobbs, and he made the tough calls that a lot of people thought, like, I don't know if this guy can get it done. And he got it done, just not enough, but he did get it done. And so I think the same thing is going to happen for Sam Darnold. They're going to let him roll the dice and see where he goes. What Sam Darnold's going to learn early is when Justin Jefferson is covered, he's not covered. You can put the ball in an area as long as you put it away from the DB. If he's covered, he's still going to make the catch. He's one of the most, I forgot what his contested catch percentage was, but it was one of the highest. I mean, remember the Buffalo Bills one-handed catch. I mean, we've seen a lot of the third down catches when he used, but his body control, his ability to keep 2 feet in bounds, and his ability to come back to the ball and to find the open zone hole. I've never seen somebody besides, Chris Carter. We've had Chris Carter on and he talked about it. Chris Carter had that ability to just find a zone hole every single time because he knew what the defense was going to do. He knew where the spot was going to be, and him and his quarterback were on the same page. I think Justin Jefferson, and that's what it's going to be tough. JJ had that with Kirk. He's now going to have to create that with a new quarterback. But the good thing is they've done it now. So now, starting today or tomorrow, I think is when he comes in, because I'll be over there on Thursday at the Vikings, and we're doing some Thursday and Friday, I think. But when he comes in, he's able to right away start talking with JJ. That's what a lot of people don't understand. Quarterbacks can just call a receiver up and say, hey, man, let's go throw. Hey, man, where are you at? Oh, I'm in Florida. All right, I'm going to be down there. I mean, come on now. Even if you don't want to get a private jet, it's like a $250 flight. He can afford that. He got $10 million this year. So he'll find where JJ's at. He's going to get down there, probably have some other receivers show up, and they're going to start working. But that's the difference in a veteran and a rookie. A rookie might not think that right away, where a veteran, Sam Darnold, knows the guy I gotta get most comfortable with is that guy 18. Now, the next step, and we'll talk about this maybe later in the show, maybe next week, but they've got to make JJ feel comfortable with Sam Darnold. I think that's the other part of this. Like, JJ has to be able to go and accept what's happening, because we know originally it was like, I want Kirk here. I want to play with Kirk. I want to make sure I got a quarterback here if I'm going to sign a long-term deal. Now the Vikings have to convince Justin Jefferson is Sam Darnold's good enough to get us through whatever we have to get through, and then we're going to draft your guy. We're going to draft you a guy that can get you going. We already saw T. Higgins once out of Cincinnati, so who knows what that is. And I look back at that draft, Sam. I don't know if you remember 2020. We all try to block 2020 out. The only thing good happened to me in 2020 was Justin Jefferson came to Minnesota. Yep. But other than that, I hated 2020. But T. Higgins was taken 33rd. The Vikings took Jeff Gladney 31st. I'm never going to speak ill of the dead, so I'm not going to talk about anything negative regarding Jeff Gladney, but the Vikings could have taken T. Higgins. Why? Because they got nothing out of Jeff Gladney that they couldn't have gotten out of a free agent. And so if they had gotten Justin Jefferson and T. Higgins, now you have 2 star rookies that are going to run your team with Adam Thielen. And that's that big 6'3", 6'4" receiver we had been talking about they needed. And then, they were trying to find, like this year, they went and got the guy, what's the guy from New England they bought in? He never really got going, though, out of Arizona State.
The wide receiver?
Yeah, he got cut. He came in, and bigger guy, wore 85.
N'Keal Harry.
Harry. So they tried that. Like, we were all thinking, like, oh, N'Keal Harry, he's going to be that red zone, that additional, big body when he goes, JJ, 1 receiver with 2 tight ends and a running back, or 3 tight ends, 2 receivers. They would have had that with T. Higgins. Now, I don't know, because T. Higgins and Jamar Chase can't coexist. Maybe T. Higgins and Justin Jefferson couldn't coexist it, but you would have got 4 to 5 years with that type of weaponry. Like, that weaponry got them to numerous deep runs in the playoffs. Like, it got them to a Super Bowl. So when you think about that, that could have worked. But they went Jeff Gladney. We were all, at the time I said it, I remember I went on national news TV. I remember that. and they had me on that Sunday morning, and I was like, I wish the Vikings had got T. Higgins. Everybody was like, oh, no, he's not going to. I had watched T. Higgins play. I knew he could do that, and we didn't do it. We got Justin Jefferson, and we went Jeff Gladney instead of T. Higgins. I thought they should have loaded up a receiver. We had just lost Stephon Diggs. I thought, in my mind, I was like, you can't replace Diggs with one receiver. We did, but why not add another one? Because Adam Thielen, I think even the Adam Thielen move would have been smoother with the T. Higgins. That became kind of a like, oh, KJ Osborne, get it done. So, but with quarterbacks, I mean, that's the key for this, Sam. They have to convince Justin Jefferson who their guy is. And there's a lot of, we're going to break down the draft. I know that. And we're going to talk about each quarterback they could possibly take. But now it all signs point to, because everybody's like, oh, they can get an edge rusher. Well, they wouldn't have got 2 edge rushers plus Blake Cashman, former Gopher. Like, they went defensive heavy on this free agency. We're going to jump into that in the next segment. But they went deep into that with defense. They also added Aaron Jones at running back. So they're doing a lot free agent wise to kind of say, look, we're going quarterback. We're getting all the pieces in free agency, and then we'll go get quarterback. What I saw the number, it was like $121 million in free agency spent, and it was still less than the Falcons spent. And they got 3 huge pieces on defense when you think about 2 edge rushers and a middle linebacker. And Blake Cashman is a guy that has earned his right to be what he is now, which is a $25 million linebacker. He's strong. He's a weight room demon. He's smart. And I'm guessing he's going to be the green dot. We're not sure of that, but I'm guessing he might be the green dot when you think about the special teams prowess with the Texans. Now, I don't think he's going to have to do special teams. We'll see. But I think a $25 million linebacker for 4 years, you don't put him on special teams unless like he either wants to or you absolutely need him to. Because he did have 19 tackles in the game, and that was partly because of special teams as well. But now he's going to come in and probably be the guy. But again, this 3-4 defense, we know Josh Metellus is the other quote-unquote linebacker at safety level. And then you're going to have your 2 rush ins, and you're going to have your 2 down linemen. And then they're going to go from there. You got to get 2 to 3 down linemen. Christian Wilkins wasn't the one they wanted, so we knew that. They got some good pieces. But they started with Sam Darnold, and I think that's what everybody wanted to know. I think Kwesi shut the crowd up quick because that would have been a loud crowd of people all week. Who's the quarterback? Who are they going to get? They got Sam Darnold right away. They went and got Aaron Jones right away. The Packers faithful is pissed off about that he defected to the Vikings, just like Saquon Barkley going to the Eagles. It's a business. Who cares? Shut up. Like, these dudes have families. Like, they don't care about who your favorite team is and who our rival is. It's a business. And Aaron Jones is going to come in, and I can't wait for those 2 games against the Packers because I know he's going to be amped up. And I know the sombreros are going to be out in Minnesota. We're going to have because I know he does the sombrero thing. So that's going to be fun to see. The purple and gold sombrero, Aaron Jones coming out, and he's going to try to run through every face mask. Like, that's my favorite Marshawn Lynch quote. I know I'm going to get got, but I'm going to get them more than they get me. And so I think that's how Aaron Jones plays. Now, health is going to be a concern for him. But we're going to talk about that and much more. We got some more free agency talk, but we had to put the Kirk Cousins funeral to bed. We had to do it. Everybody knows I'm a Kirk Cousins. I support his career. I mean, when we came back from Orlando and I met, we hung out and talked in Orlando for a little bit. Kirk Cousins is a good guy. Like, that's the thing about it. I saw him. We talked about when I saw him before the game when he was hurt. He had no reason to be there down there underneath talking to us and, showing up to the game and hanging out all day, taking his shirt off and blowing the gallows horn. Like, people forget about that little stuff that Kirk Cousins still was trying to do whatever he could to will the team to win. And so he's a good guy. Like, he's a good guy, good teammate, no malice, no malintent towards anybody. But some people just choose to not like him. It is what it is. I'll talk about that analogy too later on in the show because it's an interesting one, and I'm debating on if I'm still going to say it because when I said it to myself in the car, Sam, I was like, this might be reaching because people are going to be like, oh, I can't believe you did that one. But we'll talk about that coming up next on the Ron Johnson Show. But we have a word from our sponsors.
Quick word from Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets. Ron Johnson didn't worry when he went to watch the Nuggets take on the Jazz. Gametime is the fast, easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They've got killer last-minute deals. They give you the best price guarantee, and they just take the guesswork out of buying tickets. They've got flash deals and zone deals. And with zone deals, you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats for big-time savings. The game time guarantee means you'll always get the best price, and if you find tickets in the same section row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And that's not all you get with Game Time. You can get $20 off your first purchase when you download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On. $20 off your first purchase when you create an account, redeem code Locked On. Again, terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Well, Sam, as we talked about, we put Kirk Cousins to bed. Jacket's off. All the stuff is off. We're done. We got the regular day. But
what does he have?
For those that have seen the man, feels like this is what Aaron Jones is going to show up in Minnesota looking like on game day. Aaron Jones is flashy. He comes through with the glasses. He has the sombrero. Some little Aaron Jones-ish. We talked about this. I'm going to start there. The only reason I want to start there, Sam, is because we talked about the whole Alexander Mattison deal and Alexander Mattison leaving the Minnesota Vikings, being released. The Vikings also just released Dean Lowry as well, D lineman. So clearly they're trying to really go a different direction. Brian Flores knows what he wants on defense. You're seeing it's young, it's youthful, it's long, it's athletic, it's gritty. Defenders. And so I think, that's the next step. Dean Lowry, honestly, too. I mean, let's be real. He didn't do much for the Minnesota Vikings. So I think that was just all signs pointed to that anyway. Was a piece they added from the Packers they thought could come in and be a potential starter, but never really panned out. So it's going back to a youthful movement, I feel like, but it's getting Flores type guys. Cause I saw somebody tweet, man, how are the Vikings getting all these guys? And it's like, well, these guys want to play for Flores. Like, it's like, because they could probably have made more money elsewhere. We know some of these guys could have probably gotten bigger contracts. But also when it comes to like a system, and you see the system of rushing the passer, getting after the quarterback, what Brian Flores brings, is defensively. But starting with Aaron Jones, I liked it. They replaced Alexander Mattison with Aaron Jones. I don't think anybody in the world can say that's a bad move. That is a great move. And at the dollar amount, let's look at the dollar amount, Sam. It's $7 million. Yep. Do you know who they wanted to pay $7 million to? Dalvin Cook. And what did Dalvin Cook do? Not want the $7 million. So the Vikings had a number they knew they wanted to pay for running back just because they know where the running back market is. Dalvin Cook didn't want it. He went elsewhere, and it did not work out the way it should have. Aaron Rodgers got hurt. The Jets didn't use him. Goes to the Ravens. Doesn't get used as much there either. So it is what it is. $7 million was the number. And they gave it to Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is definitely an upgrade from Alexander Mattison, so we shall see where that goes. But looking at the defensive move, Grenard, Van Ginkel, and Cashman. I don't know how I blanked on Blake Cashman. He's our guy. And so when you look at those bodies being added, 2 edge rushers and a linebacker, that literally is like replacing everything. And that kind of points to like Danielle Hunter's probably not coming back, and DJ Wonnum's probably not coming back either. DJ Wonnum probably still can get signed though, like they could, but I'm guessing no. Danielle Hunter is probably definitely a no. Like I don't think there's any money they have left to pay for a Danielle Hunter in this free agency market. DJ Wonnum is more of let's see what's out there, and if it's not good enough, maybe he comes back to the Vikings for, less than he thought he should get. Coming off of an injury too is tough when you're a guy when you're not the guy. You were on the team as a defensive starter, but you weren't the guy. So coming off an injury, if you're not the guy, that's tougher for some teams to really take a flyer and say, yeah, I'm going to pay you exactly what you want. I don't even know if you're healthy. I don't know what you can do. We didn't draft you. Where the Minnesota Vikings did, they know what they can get out the kid, and they're willing to work with him and get him rehabbed and back onto the field. And so when you think about that, I think I got to give Kwesi right now. I got to give him a B+, like a B+. He's not going after any like big time names where we're like, oh, I can't believe he got him. But I got to give him a B+ right now. They're building the pieces, and again, to save. Well, I think they're 20 or they were 30 million less than the Falcons after those 3 guys, and the Falcons had only signed like 1 or 2 guys, and they had spent 1 guy, and they spent 180 million. And the Vikings has, got 3 guys for and still save money, and they got 1 guy for 180. You got to give Kwesi a good grade on that, B+. We'll see what the world wants to give him. But Sam, what are your thoughts on those guys? Right away, too, I'll say with these edge rushers, these are double-digit sack guys that can get after the quarterback. Blake Cashman as well as a linebacker that can cover sideline to sideline, very athletic, and get after the quarterback as well. These guys fit the Brian Flores package of like move around. Not like Danielle Hunter was more of a stiffer edge rusher, true D lineman, who's going to want to put his hand in the ground, where these guys are edge rushers that can stand up. And I think that's the big difference is these guys fit a 3-4 edge rush scheme when you think about the Texans. But what is your mind?
Yeah, defense got younger, leaner, more efficient. You hate to lose a franchise icon in Danielle Hunter, but you got 3 years younger. You paid a little less, and you get a guy with oodles of upside and talent in Grenard, and you get him for his entire prime. That's an upgrade to me. Even though Danielle Hunter's a great player, whoever signs him is going to also have to sign him until he's about 34 years old. So I think that's a good move. I think Van Ginkel is another guy coming off his first contract. He's in his prime, and this is what Kwesi does. Kwesi identifies guys that have a little meat left on the bone. They're coming off that first deal. They're in their mid-20s. They're mature. And I think that's kind of the archetype that he likes to sign. And Cashman, good pass defender too. Like that's key. I think that was maybe if there was a knock on Jordan Hicks, maybe he wasn't able to keep up with some running backs and tight ends. Blake Cashman has shown an ability to defend the pass.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the defensive moves. How about this nugget on Aaron Jones? So last year, Ron, he had a down year, quote unquote, where he was 4.6 yards per carry. That tied for his career worst. 4.6 yards per carry would tie for Alexander Madison's career best. Alexander Madison was 3.9 last year. So it's a huge upgrade. Aaron Jones is a rare running back who for his career in 7 seasons has averaged 5 yards per attempt. So I'm a huge fan of that. 1 year, $7 million. I almost wish they had him for 2 years. But I guess if things work out, maybe they can get him back for an additional season.
Yeah, and Blake Cashman is coming off one of the best seasons he's ever had. 106 total tackles, led the team in tackles, 56 solo tackles. So not a guy that's coming around jumping on the pile like some linebackers do. This guy can tackle in space. He has 2 sacks. He has 1 interception. And then you look at a guy in Jonathan Grenard
is what I heard. Yeah.
Grenard. Same 52 tackles, but led the team with 12 and a half sacks. And so that's the other part of that. When you look at DeMeco Ryans' defense, everybody's saying it's the same, similar style to the 49ers. They're not, but the difference in what DeMeco Ryans did was he wasn't looking to add +1 to the box, meaning he's not trying to overpower you in the box with his count. Like if you have 5 and you're spread out, he's not going to just go 6 just to overpower you. He's willing to go 5-on-5 and say, you get after the quarterback. He ran a lot of 2 high safety looks with the Texans. And so you think about a guy in Grenard that had to go man up, that had to go one-on-one a lot of times, tackles for a loss 15. Like this is a guy that can get after the quarterback. And that's where and again, he did have Will Anderson Jr. on the other side, and he almost doubled the number of sacks as Will Anderson Jr., which Will Anderson Jr. was considered like their guy. And this is a guy that almost doubled him in sack production. So I really like this move for Kwesi. I think it was a smart move. You're getting, like you said, you got younger. I think that's the key too. Like we often think it has to be a guy, and sometimes it just has to be a group of guys. Like you can go back to like some of the Falcons, that Falcons run year, with Matt Ryan. It was Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. The defense, not say we're no name, they had some guys, but it wasn't like they were sitting out there with Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, and Terrell Suggs. Like certain teams are defensive led with stars, and some teams just put a group of guys together and say, just play good defense and we can win this. We can get there. Like the Broncos that year was led by Von Miller, when they went to the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. Like that's kind of, you got to figure out your pieces. And for the Vikings, they're like, look, we're going to go young. Let's go young because we had a lot of old guys in the tub on not IR, but like injured. And I think that's the key for this team is they got younger. So I love that move. The other one too, we talked about earlier, Sam Darnold. That's a great free agent pickup. But I really like the Aaron Jones running back situation. When we think about the amount of times he daggered the Vikings or had a big run, and he brings a bravado to the run game. Like this is a guy that you can say, I can give him the ball because he played with Aaron Rodgers. So he knew he wasn't going to get the ball all the time. So this is a guy that knows I'm going to take my carries and I'm going to make the best of them. And I think that's what they were hoping with Alexander Madison, and they didn't get it. Now, who they get it out of? Ty Chandler. But Ty Chandler backing up Aaron Jones, I think that's two good pieces. Like that's two good pieces to a running back room. But when you look at 2022, 213 carries, 1,100 yards. I mean, this is a guy that now TD production hasn't been great since 2019. He had 16 rushing touchdowns on a 1,000-yard season, 236 carries. This is a guy that can give you 1,000 yards if you give him the ball, but also can have production with less carries. Like you said, 4.6 carries last year on 142 attempts, only less than 700 yards and 2 touchdowns. Why? I mean, we know the Packers had a plethora of running backs. Also, he was injured, and so that's going to be the other key. Can he stay healthy? And the way the Vikings throw the ball, I think he can, because that's what they were trying to do with Dalvin Cook. We're going to get you to the end of the season healthy because we're not going to give you the ball as much. And then when we need you, we're going to run you. And I think that's where they're going to go with Aaron Jones. We have hopefully TJ Hawkinson, back in time, but we have Justin Jefferson. That's what Kevin O'Connell's telling these guys. We have JJ. Maybe KJ Osborne comes back now. Like now they're like, look, we have money to pay KJ Osborne $5 million or $2.5 to $5 million a year. Like there's going to be a lot to this pieces of the puzzle. Also, the receiver draft class is pretty nice too. Like you can get a good receiver in the second or third round. So that's the other thing about this draft too. There's some good pieces because I think round 1 is quarterback. It's all signs point to that. But when you think about that, Sam, those free agents, what grade would you give Kwesi?
I think you said B+. I'd give A-. I mean, I guess it's incomplete.
Yeah,
right now because you still haven't addressed defensive tackle. And you released Dean Lowry. So they just don't have any bodies at defensive tackle. And they didn't get Christian Wilkins. He went for $110 million to the Raiders. So it's incomplete. I still would like them to fill a couple of spots on defense. Cornerback could use another veteran. Maybe they trade for L'Jarius Sneed. I don't know. I think he's got work to do. But a great start, a fantastic day one. And most of the pundits that I listen to and trust, they love it too. So I think that he's making it easier to stomach the loss of Kirk Cousins with a lot of the moves he's making. And it's showing, Ron, that this is not a rebuild. They're not tearing anything down. They're actually building it up.
Yeah, they didn't have to cut a bunch of people. They're adding pieces to go compete. I mean, we act like whoever they draft, if it's Sam Darnold starting it off and then whoever they draft is going to take over, you still have the best offensive weapons, some of the best offensive weapons at each position in the NFL now. You have a running back, you have receivers, for sure the number 1 receiver, and you have probably top 2, top 3 tight end. So they do have the offensive weapons to get it done. I mean, look at Patrick Mahomes. They pulled pieces away, added pieces, and people were like, oh, now for the Vikings, like the Chiefs, they have Chris Jones. Who are the Vikings going to get it from? I think it's going to be a number of guys now. It's going to be between 2 to 3 guys getting after the quarterback. But the fact that they call the Texans defense attack mode sounds and feels everything like Brian Flores. That's why I'm guessing those Texans guys are like, oh, yeah, let's go. Like, this is what we're used to. And now this is a guy that has a 59% blitz rate. Like, let's do it. Let's go there because he's going to let us get after the quarterback. But we got the Daily 3 coming up. We're going to talk a little bit more about some basketball. We got to talk about the free agent signings a little bit more. And then we got Sam Darnold as the last topic in the Daily 3. But that'll be 3 questions, about a minute and a half each. But we'll do that after a word from our sponsors.
Presented today by FanDuel Sportsbook. Say goodbye to busted brackets. Brackets busted day 1. You can still enjoy the NCAA tournament with FanDuel because you can bet on every game of the tournament, whether you're betting on the big upset, the 14 seed, or the 1 seed. It's time to go dancing with America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to put on the point spreads, the money lines, the future bets. You can put it on NHL, whatever you want. Every wagering option is at your disposal in the FanDuel Sportsbook app or FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Bet on college hoops and plenty more until they cut down the nets at FanDuel.
Now it's time for the Daily 3. That's 3 questions, about a minute each today. Take it away, Sam.
All right, Ron. Well, I was going to ask you about Sam Darnold before we knew that he was signed with the Vikings. I'll have to come up with a new question there. But with how about we go Timberwolves first?
Okay.
Karl-Anthony Towns. This dropped after last week's Minnesota basketball party. Torn meniscus, out for the rest of the season. Do you still have belief the Wolves can win the West without Cat?
I don't know about win the West. I think they can still compete for the top four. Even with Cat though, we talked about this. The top four, like they were all like a half game and a half behind each other. So I know those top four are gonna go up and down. But winning the West without Cat is gonna be tough. Just when you look at the last, like we were talking about 20 games at that point. I just don't know. Like I think they're already down to 2 now. And you got some tough matchups. I talked about the tough matchups coming up, how they're going to have to attack them. Now, again, Nas Reed has been going off every once in a while. So he's going to have to give them more production. I think that's where the key is going to be. Can he stay healthy? Because he's going to be asked to do a lot more now that Cat's out until I think they were saying like first, second round of the playoffs. And so that's going to be the key. Can they make sure it's not a first round exit in the playoffs so they can get Cat back in round 2? But just very unlucky, tough stretch for the Timberwolves. No, I don't think they can win the West without Cat. I think they're going to be, 2 or 3 seed right now. And that's just where I feel.
Yep, I'm resigned to that too. They play the Clippers tonight. They're 6.5 point underdogs, and they're now 1.5 back of the Thunder in the West. Let me ask you this, Ron, instead of Sam Darnold. This was some sneaky news this morning. Blake Brandle has signed a 3-year deal to stay with the Vikings at $9.5 million. So very, very low money deal, but for 3 years. Is this the Vikings' future left guard?
Possibly. Like that could be their future left guard. I think they're still, mulling over the other options. But yeah, I think when you look at him as a swing guard was his thought. I think the way it's been presented right now, people are still saying they can get Dalton Risner, maybe. Maybe they have a guy they want to draft. But when you think about having a guard that can also play tackle if needed, like he can kind of move everywhere. He's a guy that can fit in this offense. But Ezra Cleveland was a tackle and moved to guard, and it worked out for him. So I think this is kind of the Blake Brandle thought as well. But yeah, like he could potentially be the left guard. Like you have to lock down the guys you want, because if somebody gets hurt, he can easily fill in any role. And I think that's the first piece. And then, hey, if we can't get the guy we want, he's going to be our starting left guard. You put him next to Christian Darrisaw, and Darrisaw is a person and a half. So I think the goal is let's get somebody serviceable that can be next to Christian Darrisaw, because Darrisaw does help out a lot over there and makes it very tough to rush the quarterback from that side. But Blake Brandle, when he was in, I don't think I ever felt like, he's overmatched, he's overpowered. Ed Ingram too. Like he sneakingly throughout the season became good, and we didn't talk about him anymore. Like his rookie year, he struggled a little bit. Last year, he was solid. Like we didn't talk about like, oh my God, Ed Ingram, you're killing us. No. So again, we had Randall McDaniel on, and he talked about that, how the guard, it takes time to get acclimated, and it looks like Ed Ingram is. So last one before we get out of here.
Yeah, last one. Just looking at other free agency signings around the league, Ron, what has caught your eye the most at any position, any team, any dollar value?
The Russell Wilson one, of course, to the Steelers. I mean, that one caught my eye right away because that was a smart move by Tomlin. $1.2 million. He got the league minimum. And then that leaves the Broncos on the hook for $38 million. So that's just a smart move. And they still get the, possibly play the Broncos if it comes down to a playoff thing, or just go to the playoffs and the Broncos don't go to the playoffs. And like, you're paying for our playoff quarterback. You're giving us $38 million for our quarterback. So that one for me, I really did like. And honestly, like the Blake Cashman one. Like $25 million, that's a big chunk of change for a linebacker at his age. And so I'm like, that one to me kind of jumped out like, wow, that's interesting. But clearly he believes in himself. The Vikings believe in him, and you bring a hometown kid back. Has some Chad Greenway feel to it. Like I saw right away on Twitter, everybody's talking about welcome home. The Gophers are talking about welcome home. So it does add a little bit more of a nostalgia too for Minnesota fans, because they know the name Blake Cashman from the Gophers. And now he gets to wear purple for the next 3 to 4 years. And I think it's a kid's dream. So we're going to have to definitely get him back on the show, because that's a kid's dream to come back and play. I don't even know if we asked him that question. I have to go back and watch the interview again. I don't even know if I asked him that question, like, would he want to play for the Vikings? Because that's kind of cool. Eden Prairie, Minnesota, which is funny. Like he grew up where the facility used to be. So it was in Eden Prairie in his backyard. And so now he's playing, even though they're in Eagan now, but now he's playing for the Minnesota Vikings. So I think that's a cool one for me. I don't know. Was there anyone that jumped out to you?
Boy, not so. I mean, the Wilkins dollar amount was just astronomical. I mean, 110, and Kirk Cousins stunned me. 180 for 4 years. I mean, the term and the dollar figure per year. No one's worried about an Achilles in Atlanta. I mean,
Right.
they are A-OK with Kirk Cousins' health, and they're going to have him until he's 40. Ron.
Yep. And Quavo already said we got change for you down here in Atlanta. So the rapper Quavo from Migos has already said, Kirk, we got change for you. But Sam, the one thing I will say about that with Kirk Cousins too is when you've been in the desert, you'll pay anything for water. And I think that's what the Falcons are. They've been in the desert. They know what it feels like to be impoverished at the quarterback position. And now they're like, look, we just want water. Here, take whatever you can have our kids, and we'll name all our kids Kirk if we have to. We want you. But I'm Ron Johnson. That's Sam Maxwell. I want to thank you guys for joining us today on the Ron Johnson Show. This has been Locked On Sports Minnesota. Make sure you guys find Locked On Sports Minnesota 24/7 on the YouTube live stream for your favorite Minnesota sports shows around the clock. It's Vikings, Wild Wolves, Twins, and Gophers all hours of the day. I want to thank you, especially the everydayers, and have a good one.